Miami had a slow start, but mounted a furious comeback without Jimmy Butler in the lineup in a game with playoff intensity and incredible performances across the roster. 6 players scoring in double figures, but Damian Lillard came up big in the fourth quarter, and the Heat comeback fell short as Miami was eliminated from the in-season tournament. We'll break down the game on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Mark Goldberg. Joining me, as always, David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Recording this Tuesday night live from Kaseya Center, where the Miami Heat just lost to the Milwaukee Bucks, 131-124. An exciting game overall at the end. Some key plays, swing plays that we'll get to later on that ended up deciding this one. But a few big picture takeaways to start. First, the Miami Heat, with this loss, officially eliminated from the in-season tournament. They will not move on to the knockout round. Las Vegas will not be in their future, at least as part of this in-season tournament. But I want to kind of touch on the success and all the in-season tournament stuff later on. Yeah. Let's talk about the game. My biggest takeaway from the game specifically, and I think you agree on this one, really impressed with the Miami Heat despite the loss.
Yeah, no, I think the slow start was really atypical. But the shots that they were taking at that point in time weren't bad shots necessarily. I think everybody was kind of just finding their rhythm to a certain degree. And for whatever reason, the shots weren't falling. But they were
1 for 11 to start.
Yeah, 1 for 11, 15-2 start. It seemed like it was going to be a blowout. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen with this Heat team, given the fact that Jimmy Butler and Tyler Herro, their best and most combustible player, out of the lineup. And you're not quite sure what's going to happen from that point. But give the Heat credit. They found a way to chip away, started getting to their spots. Josh Richardson hit some big shots. Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, everybody started outperforming that slow start. And then from that point forward, they just build momentum slowly. They actually wound up taking a lead. And you thought maybe Miami might have a chance until that late in the fourth quarter when things got away from them a little bit.
No Jimmy Butler, no Tyler Herro, no Haywood Highsmith. They go with a 3-man bench of Jamal Cain, and now I'm blanking, Jaime Jaquez and Caleb Martin. They got contributions up and down the roster. It was one of Bam's best games of the season, and I loved how he just went at Giannis, not afraid, taking the competition to heart, and just being like, "Hey, I'm just as good as you." Was sort of the message that he was trying to send to Giannis. There was a play late in the game where he just basically posted up against Giannis. Everybody cleared out for him, and he just shoved him and shoved him and shoved him until he was below the rim. And then knocked him over, and he ended up getting a foul call on the play. I think it was Bobby Portis came in with help defense and ended up fouling Bam. But you just don't see that. You don't see anybody just push Giannis out of the way.
No.
And Bam just played with so much strength. Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot this season. Just Bam Adebayo's evolution, especially on offense. And I've talked about this. Like last year, a lot of those 15-footers, those foul line jumpers sort of floating away from the basket, a finesse shot. It was a finesse shot in order to get around and get shots over these big guys. He's basically flipped that. He says, instead of trying to get over or around the big guys, I'm going to go right through them because he's one of the strongest guys in the league. He just flatly is, and he's using that strength to such a degree now that I think it's elevated his game so much to the point now where Giannis had 33 points tonight. Bam had 31. Giannis got a lot of it at the free throw line. I know we'll touch on the free throw disparity a little bit later for sure. Oh, yes. But I came away thinking that Bam was the best player on the court.
Oh, no, I'll double down on that. I think it's undoubtedly that Bam Adebayo was the best player of the game. On a night when he was sharing the floor with Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, Bam Adebayo was the best player out on the floor tonight, even if it wasn't in a loss. The total effort, the physicality, doing everything, finding ways to combat not just Giannis, but Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez. It didn't matter who Milwaukee was sending at him. Bam was finding counters to that, being aggressive, consistent. He is having his best season of his NBA career, which has already been extraordinary, and he's playing even better, getting better with age. Every season, finding ways of improving, the aggression, the assertiveness. Eric Spoelstra and Kyle Lowry speaking after the game, both talking about Bam and his incredible improvements. Dame Lillard in the Bucks locker room saying that Bam has gotten better. And I think it's pretty clear to see that Bam has gotten better. Just the fact that he was willing to take on whatever challenges, and you pointed at that physicality with Giannis, an incredible effort from him. You knew that he was taking it personally. He wanted to make an impact, especially with Jimmy out of the lineup, and he had a fantastic showing. Unfortunately, a loss, so people will probably discount what it was that he was doing, but I thought it was an incredible effort.
There's no way you can, if you watch this game, that you can discount what it is that he did. And Giannis had a great game, and Damian Lillard scored 13 points in the fourth quarter for Miami, and we pointed this out. I was like, this is going to be a talking point if Damian Lillard goes off in the fourth quarter to take this win away from Miami, which is essentially what he did. Dame time, right? And that's sort of what Miami was missing in this game, even though Bam had it kind of going late in the game, and you got contributions from other places. But at the end of the day, it just felt like Milwaukee's star power was too. It kind of reminded me of like the Big Three Heat. It's like they could just play kind of like a C+ game, and against a team that was kind of giving it a B+, A- game, and still come away with the win just because of their talent. And that's kind of what it felt like in this one. Eric Spoelstra, even after the game, saying like Milwaukee makes you think that you're making mistakes just because of how many shots they make, but you're not really making any mistakes. And I thought the Heat played better. I thought they played better basketball than Milwaukee did. But again, the Bucks just have so much talent on that roster. Well, it's hard to stop them. This was a 4-point game with a minute and a half left. Chris Middleton hits a turnaround jumper. Him back from injury, had a really good fourth quarter too. Middleton hits a turnaround jumper. There's that foul call on Damian Lillard on Miami's side of the court that Spo just loses his bleep after. Gets called for a tech because he believed it was a travel, and I think he had a case. But it was a 2-point game at that point. Damian Lillard goes to the other end. 3 technical free throws at that point between all that stuff. And then a couple possessions later, Brook Lopez just hits an open dunk out of a timeout. And those 3 possessions basically swung the game in what was a 4-point game with a minute and a half left. Milwaukee just sort of going away with this one, and it wasn't really competitive for like the last 20 seconds. But still, you take those swing plays away, and the Heat were right there.
Well, Eric Spoelstra said specifically about the terrible foul call and the ensuing technical free throw that it kind of just took the wind out of their sails. And
I think that's fair.
I think it was a turning point that way, because you kind of feel like there's nothing much you can do. I think to your point,
that was with a minute left.
With the exception of that 15-2 start, Miami played better overall, and then at the end they played as well as they possibly could. And you can just see, well, it doesn't really matter because either Dame's going to get the call or Giannis is going to get the call. And I know we'll save the free throw discussion for later on. But I think overall, though, if you're going to take any positive takeaways from this as a Heat fan, it's that Miami played really impressively without 3 starters, 2 of their best players, and they were still able to hold their own. And I think you can see actual weaknesses in the Milwaukee Bucks roster. As much star talent as they have, there's a lack of depth there. And I think Miami can find a way to exploit that. And we saw Bam match evenly with Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're talking about an MVP player, an MVP candidate perennially, and yet Bam was able to hold his own, and more so, I think. He was able to have an overall floor game. So despite the addition of Dame Lillard, and I know a lot of people will despair about that because that's what Heat fans do, I think you can still look at Miami's roster and say, you know what? They've gotten better. Somehow, without the addition of Dame Lillard, this is a better team than they were last year, and they were pretty damn good last season.
They've lost 3 straight games, but it doesn't feel like that.
He was asked. Spo was asked about that.
And so was Kyle Lowry. Yeah, I mean, and it feels like that. Like, I get it. It's a good question, and because it does feel like, despite having lost 3 straight games, that this team is moving in the right direction. And a big reason is because of the injuries. No Jimmy Butler for a lot of these games. Duncan Robinson missed 2 of those games. They've had a lot of guys out. Haywood Highsmith with the tailbone injury. And I know, like, Heat culture, blah, 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 next man up. Like, you just need your best players, all right? Enough with the next man up stuff. At the end of the day, you need the best players. That's why you acquire better players, all right? So the fact that they didn't have them and these games have been so competitive, you zoom out away from the results of the individual games and you look at the trend lines. And this team is playing really good basketball. And when they are fully healthy, and you mentioned that they're better, they are better. They're better. Like, Duncan Robinson is evolved. Bam Adebayo is evolved. Jimmy Butler with his 3-point shot is a big deal. Jaime Jaquez Jr. is a rotation player right now that they did not have last year. Caleb Martin is starting to come into form here too. So I want
to talk about Caleb because I know we're not going to give out credit cookies in this segment, but I think his touch around the basket was sensational. Shades of last year.
Yes.
And Josh Richardson really coming into his own. Spo was very complimentary of him. That if you've been watching him play over the last few games, you've been seeing that kind of uptick in his overall performances. And I think it's just, you said it best. I think this team is just deeper. They're playing well, and you're getting contributions across the board. You add great players like Tyler Herro and Jimmy into this rotational mix. This is a team that's pretty tough to beat.
And unfortunately, we won't get to watch them in the in-season tournament. I'm actually pretty bummed about it. I'm surprising totally myself that I actually care about this thing. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about the in-season tournament, what it is that happens now that the Miami Heat are out of it, and if the Heat themselves are disappointed that they didn't make it. We're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners over at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. You can basically choose from any of this team. He's got Jaden Ivey of the Detroit Pistons, unfortunately losers of 14 straight, but Ivey has stepped up in that starting lineup now. Al Horford is playing pretty well for the Boston Celtics. Gordon Hayward is having a pretty good season, although he struggled in Charlotte's loss to the New York Knicks tonight. Sadiq Bey, with the absence of Jalen Johnson due to injury, I think he's a good addition. But you also got Scoot Henderson, the rookie there. Any one of those players that you think will really stand out?
I like Scoot. He's going to have a bunch of opportunities. He's playing a little bit slower than he was before the injury. He's worth a flyer. You know he's going to get the shot attempts.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Bey, a player that Heat fans really liked when he was kind of stifling there in Detroit. I think he's got some.
Did he have like a 41-point game once against like the Orlando Magic? Something crazy. Like
he did have.
He's just one of those guys that could just go off.
Yeah,
and you'd want him on your team if that happens.
Absolutely. So Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows the championship team is all about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. Listen, vehicles are so important to what we do in our life nowadays, but sometimes, you've got problems with them. And I know, Wes, I hate to bring it up.
That's all right.
You had a recent problem with your vehicle.
Yeah, I got clipped. Some guy hit
Miami
and run.
Driver.
Just unbelievable. Hit and run, clipped my front right headlight. And you actually brought it up. You're like, hey, why don't you look at eBay Motors? Like, that's a really good idea. I go on, boom, within 15 seconds, a bunch of different options for specifically the right headlight on my specific vehicle. And I was like, wow, that was crazy. And for way cheaper than I thought it was going to be.
That's what it is. That's how you find the parts, and it's easy to install. Look, there's some things you just want to be able to fix yourself rather than taking it to a shop, and eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You can make your ride stay running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, even headlights. Whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply.
Back here with Locked On Heat. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Everydayers, tune in tomorrow for our Mailbag episode going into the Indiana Pacers game. Get your questions in, lockedonheat@gmail.com. You can find us Locked On Heat on Instagram. And, of course, you can always send those questions into us on Twitter. Use that hashtag AskLOHeat. We'll get to some other listener questions from after this game in a minute. But let's get to the in-season tournament part of this. So the Heat were 2-0 to start the in-season tournament games. They lose to New York at Madison Square Garden. Then they lose to the Bucks, obviously, tonight, and they're eliminated from the in-season tournament. Asked the players and coaches after this game. All of them said, yeah, we're a little disappointed. But what Kyle Lowry said, and I think this is interesting, he really liked the in-season tournament. He was in on the competition part of it, and I think all of us pretty much were. But then said, that was a sprint and we still have a marathon ahead. So I think a lot of people would say, oh, Heat culture, they'll just go after this arbitrary award just because they always want to win and that's what they do and whatever. And not to say that they weren't, but they also have a bigger focus in mind, which I found interesting.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think look, the more skeptical and cynical among us will probably say, well, the players don't really care. There's nothing in them, but they're so naturally competitive, which is why they are one of 450 players across a planet of 7.5 billion people. Like, you don't get to the NBA without being hyper competitive and understanding what's at stake here. And they just want to win games. Any opportunity to win any game, whether it's an in-season tournament or not, I think they'll want to win it as much as they possibly can. But when you have these additional stakes, they certainly gear up for it. So
do you feel it?
Yes.
Like the extra competitive, the engagement, do you feel it?
I think Kyle said it. It's like, you kind of start off and you're not really sure what's happening because, the courts are different, the uniforms are different, and just, things are they're hyping it up and everything else. But then as the games progress, you start watching the standings a little bit. You've got what in group play, who's standing out. And it feels like something, whether, the courts have been ridiculed because they're so bright and things like that. But I think it's all part of making this stand out. Like you see the court and you associate it immediately. Oh, this is an in-season tournament game. And I think it's effective in that way because it makes the game different than just a regular November game. Like here we are talking about a game against the Knicks that maybe nobody else would care about. And yet it has this incredible implications for being eliminated in the in-season tournament. Like that's, it was a Friday night cast-off game on any other season, but here it becomes something greater than just the sum of its parts.
And you're looking at the injury report a little bit closer, like this game's an in-season. Is Jimmy going to play? Is he not? And you said it. You said it best. It's definitely something, right? I'm not really quite sure what it is yet, but it's something, and something in the place where nothing was, right? And not to dismiss the regular season as just the regular season, but yeah, it's like people always said, like it doesn't feel like the NBA really starts until Christmas anyway,
right?
And so if you give us just a little bit of something, we'll be in on it. We're not. Look, I was very cynical. I thought this was absolutely ridiculous, but you do sense a level of engagement from the players. Even that Knicks game, like the Heat lost that game. They were up by 21 in the second half. They go on a 19-0 run to start the third quarter. I don't know that a Tom Thibodeau team necessarily, throws the towel in, but maybe they would have, even subconsciously, it's just a Friday game in November. Like, no big deal. We lost this one. He go on a 19-0 run, tip your cap, move on to the next one. But they fought back, right, in that second half. And you get that level of engagement. Bam Adebayo in the group stage finale, 42 points tonight. Like, Spo went with a playoff rotation here. 8 guys. No Thomas Bryant. No Orlando Robinson in this one. Like, he just went with 8 guys and staggered Bam Adebayo and Kevin Love in a way that felt like a playoff rotation. Yeah. So I won't go so far as to say that it feels like playoff games. It feels like playoff stakes because obviously it does not. But it felt like something a little bit more than the regular season. And for a league that has struggled to make specific games across the calendar, especially early in this portion of the regular season, matter and feel like they matter, I think that's a win. And the other part of this, too, is that engagement from the players. Even if fans don't necessarily understand the in-season tournament and the brackets and the spreadsheets and the scenarios of if you win this by this many points and all that stuff happens, and then maybe you're in the wild card or something. Even if you don't understand that, the product on the court is better because the players are just more engaged.
That's fair. I mean, I felt a playoff intensity, and I don't know how to compartmentalize whether or not it was just because you're facing Giannis or because you're facing Dame or because you're facing the Bucks that have been a longtime playoff rival. But maybe part of it is that, and maybe a big part of it, and I think it is the tournament, the opportunity to continue to play it, to win, to establish yourself as one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. They want to win every game, but this game in particular, because of the implications, because of the pay, because of the opportunity to say, you know what, we're the first team to win this tournament. I think it all mattered. And I think it's unfortunate for the Heat because I think they would have liked to have moved on. A guy like Kyle Lowry, a veteran who's won an actual championship at the NBA level, has accomplished so much over the course of his career, multiple All-Star teams, a possible Hall of Fame career, I think a likely Hall of Fame career. And yet he's talking about this like, you know what? It sucks. I really wish we could have gone on. We kind of felt this energy as the tournament progressed, and we would have liked to have continued to play in Las Vegas. And it's unfortunate that we weren't given the chance.
So, in-season tournament update is a thing we do now. The Heat are eliminated from the next portion, which is the knockout round after the group stage. And then after that, you end up going to Las Vegas for the semifinal and the final, or just the final. Yeah. Those 2 games. Milwaukee, number 1 seed from the Eastern Conference with a point differential of plus 46. They went a perfect 4-0 in Group B, winning Group B, which was the group Miami was in, obviously. Indiana, also 4-0, the first team to clinch in the Eastern Conference. They go 4-0 in their group. They're plus 39 in point differential, so they're the number 2 seed. Boston ends up winning their group despite having lost to the Magic last week, which put them on the rocks a little bit. They ended up winning, and with their point differential plus 27, end up getting in. over the Magic, who are not in the tournament now, which I think is so interesting because they were also 3-1 in the Celtics group. So they're because they're a virtue of tiebreaker and something. There was like 3 different teams that were 3-1 in that group. So it went to point differential instead of head to head. It was crazy. The Celtics get in, whatever. The Knicks end up getting the wild card. They're 3-1. So Miami playing in the toughest group. They got 2 people out of Group B going on as the 4 teams representing the Eastern Conference. Of that group, David, do you have a favorite? Do you not a favorite team, but a team that you would bet on to win the whole thing?
I think the Knicks. I think that they might not be as much of a marathon mentality there, but I think the way Jalen Brunson has been playing, I think they're that kind of team that might look at this and say, you know what, we haven't been able to accomplish much at a postseason level. This is just kind of a taste to whet our appetite. That's WHET, whet our appetite. Oh, somebody dropped something to Kaseya Center. That's not taking place here. Maybe it's just the Bucks playoff chances.
I don't know. I kind of like Indiana in this one. I just think that their pace this is not it's not a playoff series, right? So it's just one-off games. So I think with their pace and the way they play, it's so hard to adjust to that if it were playoff series, they'd probably be the last team I would pick out of this group because I have questions about their defense and their experience. But it's not a playoff series. It's more like March Madness style. And so you have to adjust to their pace. And I think that could throw off a lot of teams. So I kind of like Indiana here.
There's a possibility there. We'll see how the Pacers, because they're going to be in town for the next couple of nights.
That's true.
That's right.
Post-game Thursday night on that Wednesday night?
Star Wars night, Thursday. Star Wars
favorite
night, November 30th, yes.
We got our listener questions next, including one about Bam Adebayo, and I'm going to clear out, and David is going to talk about the officiating that's coming up next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot over at FanDuel, and right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. This app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options from spreads to player props, over-unders, and so much more. Go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKEDON, and kick off this NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for everybody for sending in questions using that hashtag AskLOHeat after the game. As always, you can send in those questions there. LockedOnHeat@gmail.com. Locked On Heat on Instagram, where the DMs are open. This question comes from Christopher, who writes in, do you think Bam has this strong of a game if Jimmy and Tyler were healthy? Can he sustain this when the whole team is fully healthy? What do you think?
I do. I think we've seen these kinds of performances from him, not just in
exactly.
the regular season, but also in the playoffs with either Jimmy out there. I think this is just the nature of this team, is that Jimmy, as great a player as he is not that kind of consistent dominant force. He's not your averaging 30 points per game kind of guy. He's not going to get those kind of shot opportunities. We've seen him have positive impacts, really great, efficient games where he scores maybe 20 or under, and I think that's just how he's built, how this team is built. And as a result, I think Bam will find opportunities to step up. And this version of Bam Adebayo, I think, will assert himself more often moving forward. So, yes, I do like Bam's chances of being able to kind of have these kind of opportunities down the road.
He's the Heat's leading scorer already this season, with Jimmy, without Jimmy, with Tyler, without Tyler. For the balance of the season, he's the team's leading scorer. This is the new version of Bam Adebayo. Is it going to be 30 points every night? No, of course not. Nobody's like that except for basically Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic at this point. So, look, I think the Heat needs somebody to get closer to 30 points per game average. They've got Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler, who are basically all hovering around 20 to 22. Bam's probably around 23 points per game now. Yeah. They need somebody a little bit on the other side of 25 points per game. That's when you look across the league, the elite teams all have somebody averaging at least 25, 26 points per game, if not closer to 30 points per game. And so I would love it for Bam to be this aggressive. And I think he is discovering that about himself. He just did this against Giannis, man. He was going through Brook Lopez. He was going through Giannis. He's gone through Jaren Jackson Jr. He's gone through Rudy Gobert. He's gone through these guys all season long. And so he's got that. That mid-range jumper is so sweet sometimes. And so when he steps into it in the rhythm of the offense, I just feel so good about that going down. It feels like that shot, he's taking it much more in rhythm now and not settling for it, if you know what I mean. Like, he's taking it when the defense is giving it to him and it's wide open, as opposed to settling for it or kind of going into that turnaround spin move version of it. And he's shooting it at a 50% clip. That's a good shot. So between that and getting to the basket more, I love it. I think when he's facilitating at the nail, he had 5 assists tonight. It should have probably been more if Miami didn't miss a bunch of shots early in this game. Miami's offense opens up. When he's the fulcrum of the offense, when he's in the middle of the floor doing stuff, Miami's offense just functions a lot better. And you can also, and then you just layer on the Tyler Herro dribble handoffs and that 2-man game that was developing a lot before Tyler Herro went down. The pick and roll game that actually got things that made things easier for Bam. Ditto for Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson's finding Bam on lobs too. And obviously that 2-man game has been a staple of Miami's offense for the last 4 years. Jimmy Butler playing off of that in the dunker spot, cutting, all these things. Caleb Martin, Jaime Jaquez finding their spots in sort of this Bam-centric universe. I think that's the best version of Miami's offense. And I would love to see them just continue to lean further into it. And you know that Jimmy doesn't really want to do that in the regular season. Bam kind of does right now. He's kind of on a mission, right? Not just to win Defensive Player of the Year, but he's kind of on a selfish mission this year to show people what he is. And I'm here for it. Like, I think the Heat need somebody on a selfish mission. Just take this regular season seriously and just sort of terrorize other teams. And that's what he's trying to do.
I don't know how selfish it is, but certainly I think he's trying to squash once and for all he's not aggressive, he's not assertive, whatever you wanted to call it in years past. And look, we kind of understood that there were moments there where he wasn't necessarily assertive, but overall his impact was still so great. But this is a different version of it. I think it's marrying all those different parts of who he is, not just the fulcrum, the hub on offense, the defensive genius level plays that he makes so consistently. And you couple that alongside this incredible scoring streak that he's on right now. And I think this is the best version of him. And a little unfortunate that he wasn't able to get to the line more. 5 of 7 from the field and for his 31 points. But think about this, 13 of 27. He took 27 field goal attempts.
I love it.
Last year we were like, can he get to 18? And there were nights where he wouldn't. And today he had 27 field goal attempts. And the 13, you can see this. If you didn't watch the game, it does sound inefficient. But I think there were a lot of missed shots there that just unfathomably fell out. There was one time where he was driving baseline and had like a wide open dunk. And the ball, just as if a ghost came from out of nowhere, poked it free, flew up in the air, and I've never seen Bam bobble a ball like that. It must have been sweaty.
It's not even that inefficient, right? 13 to 27. Yeah. That's just a hair below 50%. So
exactly.
I'm here for it, and he should be taking 27 shots a game. I'm here for it. But the thing is, he also doesn't. When he sees that Tyler Herro's got it going, when he sees that Jimmy's got it going, when he sees that Jaime Jaquez, he's just like, all right, I'm going to do my thing, because he knows he can impact the game defensively at a really high level too.
Yeah.
There was one last thing here. In the fourth quarter, there was sort of this back and forth between Bam and Giannis that was so entertaining, and I loved it. Bam cleared out the court. Everybody, he went ISO, post up against Giannis. Giannis ends up poking the ball away from him, causes a turnover. Got the better of him. Credit to Giannis there. Giannis recovers the loose ball, takes it down the other floor. Bam recovers, sprints down to the other side. Giannis kind of draws back a little bit.
Yep.
Bam gets in front of him, puts himself in position, and then draws the charge on Giannis. And like that little back and forth, it's like, okay, like they were going back and forth offensively the entire night. And then defensively, they kind of made big plays, right? Giannis with the poke away, and then Bam getting on the other side. And they both kind of got a W there from the other one. So I love to see Bam like that. If he's elevating himself saying, I'm not even going to worry about Damian Lillard, I'm not going to worry about Chris Middleton, I'm going head to head with maybe the MVP of the league right now.
He did.
And he certainly did. All right. I hate talking about officiating.
So do I.
I think no, you don't.
Yes, I do. I don't ever look at it as an excuse. I think there are nights when there are bad calls.
Okay.
Tonight was one of them.
Let's ask the question here. Max writes in: are the officials getting worse? You don't have to tell me. You don't have to give me like stats about whether or not they're good or bad. This is just an opportunity. I'm going to clear out. I have a rule that I don't talk about officiating. You're a little bit more open to talking about it. You acknowledge that it's a factor in the game. I pretend that it's not. I understand that, but I'm clearing out. You're Bam Adebayo, and I'm Caleb Martin in the corner, just waiting my time.
All right,
go ahead. Have your officiating thing.
No, it's not a rant or anything like that. But I think you see Eric Spoelstra lose his mind late in that fourth quarter in a tight game where Damian Lillard basically, like Jeremy Lin years before, just throws his head back and all of a sudden magically gets a call going his way. And I think he takes, I don't even know how many free throws of his 10 of 10 free throws. I don't know how many of those he took in late in the fourth quarter, probably most of those. Giannis similarly, let me see. I've got the box score right here. Let's see. Giannis took 4 free throws and Damian took 5 free throws. They made all 9 of those in the fourth quarter, and I think that was the deciding swing. I don't want to necessarily take anything away from the Bucks because they did play overall a mostly good game, but I think the edge was their ability to get to the line. I asked Kyle Lowry about it. He kind of said, you know what, this is who they are. You understand they're all NBA players. They're going to get those calls. I call horseshit. I'm sorry. I don't think it's fair that they should just get those calls because they're all NBA players. Like the referees are so inconsistent on when they let players have this incredible amount of physicality where they can attack each other, bludgeon each other to death like Giannis and Bam were doing. But then if Giannis falls, that looks like an obvious call. Let's make that one. And if not for a brilliant Eric Spoelstra challenge, it would have been another flop from Giannis to lead to 2 more free throws. Instead, it was, taken away. It was a successful challenge. So my overall point is just that I think they got the benefit of a lot of calls and made a huge difference down the stretch. And as a result, they get the win. And like I said before, I think it takes a lot of their energy and emotion out of it, knowing that there's only so much you can do if they're going to be able to just flop their way into a win.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast app. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.